wanna do, 'cause I'm just a sinking ship, and you're just a pair of lips that I've lost in the moment. All I want is for you to come back. Now I'm caught in the middle of life, and I need
I want to address the recent situation in Syria first, because I believe that, and I could be wrong, but I believe it was a strategic mistake for Russia and Iran to allow a terrorist entity backed by the West, armed by the West, financed by the West, and helped by the West to depose Bashar Assad and to take over Syria. What is your take on the situation in the region and the situation with the terrorist group now in control of Damascus?
Well, I agree. It seems like, if not a mistake, it's certainly a setback. And whether I don't really know all of the parameters that the decision makers were facing as people, like Putin and the supreme leader of Iran weighed their options. But yeah, it does seem to me that China, and also we should throw in China, because the biggest front of this war by the Western bankster empire to establish a one world neoliberal state with themselves as a neo-feudal aristocracy is trying to keep China down. That's their biggest concern, I think. And so from the Chinese perspective, one would think that it would be wise to try to find a way to slow that march before it gets to the gates of Beijing. And letting them get into Syria is obviously bad for Iran, it's bad for Russia, and in the long run, it's bad for China. And with Syria, I think that Syria had become something of an economic basket case. I don't think we can really necessarily blame China for that, although a full Chinese commitment to rebuild Syria, along with its partners, say, the Gulf Arab states and Iran, which China brokered a rapprochement between the Gulf Arab states and Iran. If China had been able to get that new, relatively independent West Asian group together to back fixing Syria's economy a couple of years ago, then maybe this wouldn't have happened. And that didn't happen. And who we're all going to blame for this, I don't know. But basically, nobody came through. The Gulf Arab states, which had promised big piles of their oil money to rebuild Syria, they didn't come through. And some suggest that that was deliberate deception and treachery. Mm-hmm. And I wrote an article airing out that hypothesis for Crescent International. That is, the Gulf Arab states, obeying orders from their New World Order masters in places like Washington and Tel Aviv, decided to make this big offer and get Bashar al-Assad to let down his guard and say, oh, well, I'm okay. The Gulf Arabs have accepted me. They promised to throw huge piles of money to rebuild my country. I'm good now. There's no more insurgency. I don't have to worry about it. And then when the Gulf Arabs didn't give him any money, he kept putting it off. So he can't pay his army anymore. And his generals are getting like $50 a month salaries. It's pretty easy for the other side to sneak in there with cash and hand them wads of cash and say, hey, we have a plan, just await orders. And that's kind of what happened. And so Russia and especially Iran probably were faced with a situation where suddenly it was a fait accompli, and they either could throw more resources into a losing cause ultimately, or cut their losses. And now Syria is the other side's problem. And it could become a problem for the other side because Turkey is a big winner. Turkey now has an interest in maintaining Syria's territorial integrity, setting up a Sunni Islamic kind of regime there, and then chasing the Israelis out. Israel, of course, is never going to leave. They're the greater Israel Antichrist project, and so Turkey and Israel are now at loggerheads. And it could get really interesting. And so maybe in the long run, Russia and Iran and even China may not regret having allowed Assad to go down as much as you and I might think that they would.
Kevin, on that note, I want to go back to something because, yeah, Syria became an economic basket case, but they did it with loyalty. And this is something that is often missed in addressing this. Assad was loyal to both Iran and Russia in a way, and what I mean by that is that he was approached by the United States, by France, by Europe to allow a pipeline to go through his territory. The United States offered to pull troops out. The United States offered to bring them back into the fold of so-called "quote unquote" the Western world, and Assad wouldn't do it because it would cut into Russia's money, and it would also cut into Russia's influence because the reason for the pipeline was to eventually um, move Russia completely out of the oil and gas markets in Europe, and then they could really put pressure on Russia's economy vis-a-vis Ukraine, Georgia, Armenia, and all of those other areas that are hot spots. And Assad wouldn't go for it. And at the same time, the United States also approached him, and I was reading some of the articles and some of the writings on this. Assad was approached by the West to allow, the U.S. said that they would pull out all troops, give the territory back over to the Syrian government if Assad forced Iranian troops out of Syria. And yet he said no. And I think this is missed in the whole makeup of the story. Even though his government wasn't perfect, even though he became an economic basket case in Syria, but it was because of loyalty to his two main allies, because he could have been brought back in. Remember, before the so-called revolution, the U.S. Western-inspired revolution, he was approached by the U.S. ambassador at the time to allow another pipeline to come through, and this would have been this pipeline would have preceded the so-called war in Ukraine, and I believe that was put there specifically to deprive Russia of resources when they pushed Russia to do what Russia did. But Assad wouldn't do it. And I keep going back. To me, loyalty is everything. Principles is everything. If you're not loyal, if you don't have principles, then you're not worth a hill of beans. And it showed that even though Syria was an economic basket case, I think that they should have invested more in Syria, because had he not said no to the West, they would not have destroyed the economy, because they had designs. The bigger designs was to weaken Russia and to then eventually attack Iran. And now we're seeing the fallout from that with the destruction of Syria's air defense systems, which would in any attack on Iran would be crucial to Israel and the United States. So I believe that they should have invested more, even if Assad did not want to. It was in their national interest to double down in it. And I may be alone in this perspective, and I can accept that. But what is your take on that situation?
Well, I tend to agree with you, Rashid. I think that it would have been smart for the multipolar world countries to massively strengthen Syria and to make sure that Syria didn't get taken out the way it's been taken out. It has been a set somewhere between a setback and a disaster. I think Russia probably saw that they're winning in Ukraine, but they're up against some, very, very powerful and nefarious people, of course. And so, they've been playing this brinksmanship with nuclear World War III being 5 minutes away for a couple of years now. And I think Russia probably decided that basically the deal was, okay, the West says we'll let you guys win in Ukraine. We didn't think you could do it, but you did, and we can't stop you. So we'll let you have Ukraine, but you're going to have to give us Syria, and we've set things up so that you'll lose if you try to keep Syria. So I think it may have reached that point, but it shouldn't have reached that point in the first place.
Right.
Yeah, the multipolar world forces should have found a way to basically make Syria unbeatable. Again, I keep coming back, and more. I'm seeing that. I agree with what Zafar Bangash, the editor at Crescent International, said on my radio show the other night, which is that maybe it's time for Iran to reconsider its ban on nuclear weapons, because the weak point of the imperialist Project Antichrist is in a sense the symbolic center of this Project Antichrist, which is, I think, another. There's sort of two aspects to this. One of them is, we Western neoliberal Europeans led by Zionist Jews are going to take over the world and impose a one world government. However, and we're all secularist atheists. Then the other approach to it is, we're going to do all that, but our Jewish Messiah is going to rule the world from a rebuilt temple in Jerusalem. And that's the mythological, religious approach to the same project. But it's the same project either way you look at it. It's world conquest by Westerners led by Zionist Jews. And to try to stop that, I think the multipolar world, rather than just letting them, roll through countries like Syria, Libya, and the 7 countries in 5 years they targeted with their 9/11 false flag. Iran is the last one on that list. You obviously, if you're on the multipolar side, you can't allow that. So what do you need to do? Well, nuclear weapons are a pretty formidable deterrent.
Told you to walk away. That was my first and last mistake. I'm blue without your face.